For our third episode of this series, we're taking a look at Iron Staff, which is attached to probably the most contentious Warframe in the entire game. I know a lot of you watching probably hate Wukong, but I ask that you leave the politics at the door for this episode. I don't care if this isn't the optimal way to play Wukong, or if he's killing the game, or anything like that. I just want to talk about his Exalted weapon, which is honestly much better than people give it credit for. So then, Iron Staff is granted to Wukong when he uses the Primal Fury ability. Based on the mythical weapon in the Eastern classic Journey to the West, this weapon's main trait is that it's got a lot of range and can change in size during certain combos, just like in the story. I don't think that Sun Wukong ever AFK'd with Azar in Journey to the West, but hey, you can take some creative liberties sometimes. Unlike the other Exalteds we've talked about, this weapon doesn't really have a central gimmick, it's just a big stick. Likewise, we're just gonna move right into the stats. So, Iron Staff deals 300 damage, which is split between 68% impact and 32% slash. The wiki says that Iron Staff deals 250 damage, but I see it as 300 in-game, so I'm assuming that's outdated. The ability it's tied to, Primal Fury, drains 5 energy per second, which is pretty high for an Exalted, but not suffocatingly so. The staff has a crit chance of 25%, a critical multiplier of 2 times, and a status chance of 30%, which are all pretty good. The status chance is the highest of any Exalted melee out of the box, but because of things like Chromatic Blade and Reactive Storm, it doesn't hold that title for very long. The attack speed is average at 1, which is pretty standard and not all that noteworthy. The weapon's main claim to fame is its range of 3.5 meters, which on top of its 100% follow-through makes it good at hitting lots of enemies at once. Range mods on Iron Staff also visually increase the range of the staff, which is absolutely hilarious and unironically my favorite part of this entire weapon. I'm like Darth Maul if he wasn't fucking around. The heavy attack deals the usual 5 times damage at 1500, nothing crazy there. Slams from Iron Staff deal 150 extra damage in a 3 meter radius, otherwise they deal 500 in a 7 meter radius. Heavy slams deal 900 damage in a 10 meter radius, which is a very large radius for a slam attack. We'll touch on this more when we talk about ways to build the weapon, but I wanted to put a pin in it now while we're on the topic of the stats. Moving on to the stance, I'm pleased to report that I actually mostly like this one. Its combos deal solid damage and have lots of multi-hits, which help leverage the high status chance of the staff. The combos also have lots of forced impact procs and even some ragdolls, which, when coupled with the large range of the weapon, make it surprisingly good at crowd control. The combos also have meaningful variety, and because the last hit of each combo is normally fairly delayed from the previous hit, there's fun choice in either chaining combos together for maximum speed, or letting a full combo play out for its big finisher. The animations are also just really goofy, which I think is a lot of fun. Let's take a closer look. The neutral combo has quite a bit going on. It's one big multi-hit, and then one big single hit that forces impact, then finally a 360 multi-hit that forces impact and knocks down. This combo is fairly quick on the first 2 hits, but the last hit is rather slow, with a lot of downtime between the previous hit and the final one. It also has Wukong fall flat on his face after the combo ends, which means there's quite a bit of end lag as he has to stand back up. Even so, this last hit is huge and very strong, with this combo being the highest average damage combo in his arsenal in exchange for it being kinda lethargic. The forward combo keeps Wukong surprisingly mobile, despite the animations not really conveying as much. It's 2 quick swipes that are fairly weak, a big 360 multi-hit, and then a slam that ragdolls enemies. This slam at the end is especially noteworthy because it also spawns a vortex that pulls in enemies within 7 meters for 2 seconds. As far as I can tell, the range and pull duration don't scale with any stats, but it's useful for crowd controlling enemies and getting them piled up right in front of Wukong. In fact, it sets up nicely for the next combo. For the block combo, Wukong does a 360 hit before summoning the Thick Stick and slamming it into the ground 4 times. The first and third hit force an impact proc, and the final hit lifts enemies. But the real interesting thing about this combo is all the slams it produces. These slams deal blast damage, have a 7 meter radius, and scale with slam-based mods like Seismic Wave. They also don't spawn a vortex like the forward combo, which gives them some meaningful difference. This combo essentially takes away the typical range of the staff as you're using it vertically, but in exchange you get to leverage slams, which have a high range by themselves. Unfortunately, the slams can't crit or inflict status effects, so while I find this really interesting and also really goofy, it kinda falls flat unless you're hitting enemies with the staff itself. The last combo, the forward block combo, is the least remarkable in my opinion. The first hit is a stab for 200% damage that forces an impact and puncture proc, with the second hit being a kick that launches Wukong forward and knocks down. This combo honestly looks really cool, but its narrow hitboxes and middling damage make it less useful than the other combos in my experience. As for the other attacks, air attacks deal 200% damage and swing in a pretty large arc, and while the slide attack is huge, its damage multiplier isn't anything noteworthy. The heavy attacks deal 500% of the weapon's damage like I mentioned earlier, but that still hits very, very hard. Because of Wukong's multi-hits in his normal combos, he can build combo for these heavies very fast, and Tennokai mods like Opportunity's Reach allow the heavies to hit enemies from a frankly disgusting distance. These heavies do have a problem though. The hitboxes on them are really weird. The first heavy hits really low, so it often misses things and just hits the floor instead. And the second hit is an overhead, which doesn't really take advantage of the staff's range because it's swinging vertically. This weird hitbox thing is honestly an issue with the entire stance, though it's most pronounced on the heavies. I feel like there are times I just whiff attacks that absolutely seem like they should have connected, which makes me feel like I'm playing For Honor, and trust me, comparing anything to For Honor is an insult. The last thing I want to talk about are the slam attacks, which I mentioned briefly earlier. These attacks, and the heavy slams especially, are absolutely huge and take away from a lot of the downsides of the finicky stance hitboxes. While I don't think Slam Wukong is the only way to play him necessarily, and I personally find it kinda boring, it is absolutely incredibly strong. You can even combo this with Tennokai for full combo heavy slams, though keep in mind range doesn't affect slam radius, so it's better to use mods like Discipline's Merit for that type of setup. You can very easily turn the staff into a massive AoE that, with the right mods and setup, can deal more points of damage in one slam than there are people in Canada. Okay, so when I said that this weapon didn't really have a gimmick in the beginning, I accidentally lied. You see, I originally uploaded this video first for members, and member Martine asked if the staff still scaled its range with combo count. This was an old mechanic that got removed, and I remember testing when the rework was new and finding out that it didn't come back despite talk that it would. I even DM'd Pablo asking about this on Twitter back then. No response. Funny thing is, I decided to go retest it after this comment as I totally forgot to, and wouldn't you know it, the mechanic actually exists now. I don't know for sure what the numbers are because the information is seemingly not anywhere, not even the wiki, and the hitboxes on the stance are a disaster like I said. For my testing, it seems like each combo tier adds half a meter of range up to a maximum of 5.5 meters of range at full combo. This is an absolutely huge jump in range that is incredibly powerful, making the weapon reach 9 meters with no mods, going as high as 14 meters with primed reach and spring-loaded blade. This mechanic also makes the gladiator set trick kind of better by proxy, as you already have a strong incentive to keep your combo count up, so it isn't that big of a deal to just throw the set on your regular melee and reap the bonus critical chance. This is also a strong argument in favor of Tennokai too, as preserving combo is very valuable with this mechanic in play, and it opens a world of opportunity with the existence of Tandem Bond. I guess we also know why Drifting Contact works on Exalteds now too. My bad on missing this the first time. Like I said, it isn't listed anywhere in-game or even on the wiki, but huge thank you to Martine for pointing this out. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's go over Primal Fury's augment, Primal Rage. This mod grants Wukong 15% more critical chance for every kill he gets with Iron Staff, up to a cap of 150%. If he gets no kills for 5 seconds, this bonus decays at a rate of 1% per second until it goes away completely. The critical chance bonus is additive with mods like the Steel family, only applies to Iron Staff itself, and resets if Iron Staff is dispelled for any reason. The critical chance gain per kill is affected by strength, and the decay rate is affected by duration, but the critical chance cap does not increase with any stats. It is a hard 150% cap, which honestly kinda sucks. Don't get me wrong, this augment is 100% worth using if you're playing around Iron Staff, but compared to a lot of other Exalted augments, it's just kinda weak. I do wish they'd uncap the critical chance increase, but Pablo has said in the past he doesn't plan on buffing characters that are already overrepresented even if certain parts of their kit are underrepresented, so don't expect this to get a bump anytime soon. Okay. This is going to be kind of different, but instead of going right into the building process, I want to talk about how Iron Staff interacts with Wukong's wider kit first. The main thing to note here is that, when Iron Staff is equipped, Wukong's Celestial Twin will also whip out his big stick. The clone deals half of the damage Wukong does, but this still allows you to cover more ground and spread more damage and status effects with very little effort. You can also take Celestial Stomp to give your clone a sort of budget Rhino Stomp, as it functions very similarly on all enemies within 20 meters of the slam. The stun lasts for 6 seconds, and this duration is not affected by mods, so keep that in mind. Wukong's Cloudwalker also has an important property in regards to Iron Staff. You can perform slam attacks out of it, though there's a 2 or so second window where you can't recast Cloudwalker after using it to set up a slam. This delay used to not be a thing, and it was an absolute plague in the past, as it allowed Wukong to spam heavy attacks so fast that he essentially removed the ability for other people to play the game. I know I asked you to leave Wukong politics at the door for this video, but I never said I had to, and I want to use this double standard to make a statement. If you use this strategy in public lobbies, I will find you. Cloudwalker also heals the clone and makes it invincible while active, so you can use this to stay alive and make him do all the work for you. Cloudwalker also opens enemies it hits to finishers, and while the window is pretty brief, this can still be used to get finishers for things like Melee Crescendo. The last ability, Defy, visually uses the staff, but it doesn't actually scale based on its mods. How it works is that Wukong absorbs all damage he takes for a brief time and multiplies it by 7.5 times, scaling with strength, before dealing it to enemies within 12 meters, scaling with range. He also gets between 50 and 1500 armor depending on the damage absorbed, and this armor also applies to his clone, who also mimics Defy and deals the radial damage as well. Why am I explaining this in an Iron Staff video? I don't know, dude, this thing needs the runtime. I do also want to briefly mention Wukong's passive Primal Forces, which gives him a 300% boost to elemental damage for 60 seconds. This is inconsistent and requires you to die, but it's technically a damage boost, I guess? Okay, now moving on to the building stuff. Critical Chance is an easy pick, which is going to continue to be a trend throughout this series. Red and Purple Archon Shards, Cat's Eye, Tenacious Bond, Wrathful Advance, Arcane Avenger, I'm sure you get the drill by now. The status chance is also high enough to be more than workable, and 60/60 mods give you solid odds of proccing debuffs. When it comes to what elements to use to take advantage of this status chance, Viral and Heat remain the easy option, with Viral making enemy health take more damage, and Heat being a damage over time effect that also removes armor. But there's plenty of fun variety here. I go over these more in depth in Excalibur's episode, but just to quickly go over it again. Cold damage gives you a bump in crowd control and crit chance and can trigger Archon Flow. Toxin is a DOT that ignores shields and can proc Corrosive with Archon Continuity, and Electric is a multi-target DOT that deals damage instantly. Because of the large amount of multi-hits in the stance, you'll inflict a lot more status effects than you'd expect, implying your hits actually connect. For some fun combos, I enjoy Blast with Electric or Toxin, as well as Corrosive with Heat or Cold. Because of Focus Radon and Magnetic Rush, you can also throw Radiation and Magnetic in the mix without needing to combo primary elements, which can let you get a lot of status effects going. Because of all these statuses, Condition Overload is also a solid take on the staff if you're focusing on the status playstyle. I also think the attack speed can do with a little boost, but I don't think it's dire, and stuff like Fury or Magnetic Rush are enough in my experience, though I think that's ultimately a preference thing. I don't think the range needs to be increased, as it's already pretty high, but it's so funny to watch the staff get comically long that I love using range mods. Stacking both Primed Reach and Spring-Loaded Blade gets you nearly 10 meters of range, and stuff like Opportunity's Reach can get that even further. Do you need to stack both? No, honestly you don't really need to take either of them, especially because of the combo count scaling with range. I just think it's super funny. Tennokai in general is a good take for Wukong if you ask me. His heavies are strong and reach really far, and he can use it to squeeze more range, but that's also definitely not required. Now, that's the more standard stuff you'd want on Iron Staff, but I do want to come back around to the slam strategy. For a build like this, you don't need range mods, as those don't affect the slam. Instead, mods like Seismic Wave, Galvanized Reflex, and Killing Blow can be used for very powerful heavy slams, which, again, hit in a huge 10-meter radius. That slam radius is higher than the staff itself with both Primed Reach and Spring-Loaded Blade, which is kinda nuts. If you want to do full combo heavy slams, you can also drop Galvanized Reflex in favor of Tennokai to preserve your combo, and using stuff like primary and secondary dexterity and Power Spike can help preserve your combo counter as well. I do think this kind of build can get stale pretty quickly, as it's just spamming the same move over and over, and it kinda lets the fun parts of the stance go to waste, but it's undeniably really effective. It hits at a huge area, deals an eye-watering amount of damage, and doesn't have to deal with the staff's finicky hitboxes. Just, do know that if you use this in a public lobby, you may receive some strongly worded chat messages. To round this episode out, I want to talk about some Helminth abilities for Iron Staff. Wrathful Advance is an obvious one, as it gives you a huge crit chance boost and is also a powerful movement tool. Warcry is another easy one if you don't want to take an attack speed mod or arcane, or if you're trying to overpower the downtime in certain combos through sheer speed. Nourish is also very good, both for offsetting the energy drain and for granting viral damage, which means you can run other elements on the staff itself to leverage its solid status chance. This can let you take setups like, say, Blast and Toxin with Magnetic Rush and Archon Continuity for a whopping 7 status effects on the staff alone. You could always use a primer like Diriga or Panzer or something like that, this is just an option. Because it's a universal faction damage buff, Roar is also very good if you're relying on triggering damage over time effects like Heat, Toxin, or Electric, as those elements use Roar's bonus twice in their damage calculations. Zata's Whisper is also a strong bump in damage, and it applies an extra status effect for Condition Overload, so if you're using that mod, it can give you a bump in damage that way as well. It just, makes your fashion look like shit. I generally quite like Lycath's Hunt, and while you can absolutely use it on Wukong, I find that his survivability and energy management is generally lax enough that it doesn't feel needed to me. Still, if you're using a strategy that has low efficiency or something, then the good old Equilibrium and Lycath's combo is as good as it always is. So, that's Iron Staff, an Exalted tied to one of the game's most controversial Warframes. People often shit on Iron Staff because it lacks a central gimmick like Hysteria's invincibility or Exalted Blade's waves. Aside from the combo count thing, that's so obscure nothing in-game or even the wiki mentions it. But it's still a very fun and very powerful weapon under the right circumstances. Sure, it doesn't really have any sauce aside from being a big stick, but Wukong certainly knows how to use his size. But hey, if anything, I guess we can just say the heavy slams are the gimmick and call it a day.